This week in a bumper edition of Flickering Dreams, we have the following films to review. We have the stock market shenanigans of Dumb Money. We have the old cronies back in Expendables 4. We have a rags to riches tale of an astronaut wannabe in A Million Miles Away. We have the new whodunit, kind of The Lesson. We have a Netflix film called Accused. And finally, we have on Disney Plus the science fiction film No One Will Save You. Also, in any other business, we look at the upcoming London Film Festival. We celebrate 50 years of The Exorcist. And we pick our favourite films from today's featured director, who is Denis Villeneuve. That's all on Flickering Dreams. So we have a lot of stuff to get through today, and we're going to start with a film which came out last Friday, and this is Dumb Money. And Dumb Money concerns the world of stockbroking, and it's all about a novice stockbroker and YouTuber who takes the stock market and the big fund managers by storm. Here's a clip.
Do you have a minute?
Babe,
how much did we make today?
5 million?
How much did we lose today?
$1 billion.
And yesterday?
4 million?
And yesterday?
$1 billion.
Babe,
Yeah.
we're like really fucking rich.
Let's start with you, Scott. What did you make of Dumb Money?
I was surprisingly a fan of Dumb Money, to be honest with you, Bob. I thought that going into it, based on the trailer and what I'd read, it was going to be a little bit like The Big Short, which was a film that, despite its popularity, I despised. I actually gave it a 1 out of 10 rating. And
Oh, wow.
Everyone hated me for that, but yeah, it just was not for me at all. This one, I think, takes that financial markets and it basically makes it easier to understand. Although I know The Big Short tried to do that, still didn't work for me. This one, I think, made it make a bit more sense. We've got a great cast in here. We've got Paul Dano as the lead character, Keith Gill, who's known as Roaring Kitty online as his influencer profile. And yeah, so he basically spots this gap in the market, I suppose, for a company called GameStop, which I suppose is the equivalent to GameStation over here we'd have. And what's essentially happened is that it's a company during the pandemic that isn't doing very well in terms of selling physical media, but the Wall Street hedge funders have bet against it and want it to go under, whereas Roaring Kitty is online telling people, no, let's put your money into this. He puts his money into that. More other people put their money into that. The price goes up. It means that all the little people are making money. And at least in Seth Rogen's case, the rich people are literally sweating at the thought of losing billions. This film, for me, I thought was surprisingly dramatic and kept me on the edge of my seat. It's based on a true story from 2021, although it's something I didn't really know about. It's definitely not something I would follow. And so I didn't really know how it went. So I was quite exhilarated about watching where this was going to go, who was going to win and who was going to lose at the end of it. And so that I found really exciting. If there was one or two things that did bug me, however, and I know it's a pet peeve of yours, Bob, is the amount of swearing. And I know in some films it can be part of it and it's about the culture and you can understand it. I did not find it necessary at all to have that amount of swearing in this film. And it's punctuated by a hip-hop soundtrack that is very sweary, very crude, very vulgar. And if you like that music, fine. I'm not a fan of that music. And it just all seemed unnecessary for a film like this to have that in the background. And it all happened in the early scenes. I was thinking, oh no, I'm going to hate this film. Luckily, the film was good enough that I could put that and to enough of a side and still enjoy the film for what it was.
Yeah.
And
that was one of my big bugbears, as you rightly say. Not just because of the swearing, but that old topic, which I have rattled on about in previous ones, about the use of the N-word in rap music on the soundtrack. And there was just so much of that I didn't like it. My wife didn't like it. I think I'd be surprised if 50% of the audience hated that in watching the film. I don't know. If you've got a view on this, let us know. But to me, I just really despise that. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. Carry on.
No, you make a good point. And it's something that I told some of my friends about as well, and they didn't really know the film, and they were asking, is it like a predominantly black cast? And I was like, not really even.
No.
I can only really, off the top of my head, think of one major sort of black character in it as well. When I say major, she was a supporting character, one of the people who invested on Rowan Kitty's advice. But yeah, I just don't understand the need for that soundtrack and the writing of this script and all that dialogue. It just didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
But that stuff aside, purely in terms of the content of the narrative itself, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Emma,
I did go and see this one. I very much enjoyed myself. I wasn't too sure. I always feel a bit iffy about, based on true event films. It just, something about judging them doesn't feel quite right. But yeah, I thought it was really well done. Paul Dano and Shailene Woodley, I thought, made a great pair together, really worked well off each other.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the acting was good. And I'll be honest, I did not notice the swearing at all. Honestly, at all.
You're inured to it. It's been
I think
ground
potentially
into you.
it's because I saw it after seeing Expendables 4 and I just kind of switched my brain off, maybe. Spoiler alert for the next review. I thought it was well paced. Quite short. I was surprised because normally that sort of film is like over 2 hours. So,
yes.
I think it was 1:45-ish. I did come out of the screening really annoyed by it though, and it was nothing to do with the film, just the actual real life ending to that story hacked me off so much. I was like, that was a great film, but people suck.
Titles, those titles that explain what happened afterwards. The other thing that confused the hell out of me, and we won't give a spoiler as to who's involved, but they basically kept showing the net worth of all the individuals in the film, and particularly the small investors. And most people seem to do very well out of the Roaring Kitty investments. But there was one particular character who started off with a negative net worth and ended up with a negative net worth. And there was no explanation as to what they did differently to all of the other people. So I was left very confused by that, and I wasn't sure exactly what had happened and why. So I was left puzzled by that. But yeah, I thought there was a nice kind of chaotic, positive energy about the film. And I guess that's one way that maybe the rap music and some very, very crafty editing of live news footage and TikTok and Reddit comments and so on flashing up on the screen. I thought that was done very well. For me personally, I love The Big Short. This was not as good as The Big Short, in my opinion, and not just because there wasn't any Margot Robbie in a bubble bath explaining what was going on. Not that I'm that shallow. It didn't quite get there for me, but I still think it was very good. I mean, Paul Dano and Shailene Woodley, two of my favourite actors at the moment on the screen. The fact they were together, I think Shailene Woodley was particularly strong as the wife who was kind of supportive, but was she with him 100% or not? I wasn't sure, but I thought that was a really nicely nuanced performance. So yeah, scores on the doors. Emma, what would you give it?
I'm going with a 7.
A 7. Scott?
I went with an 8 for this one.
An 8 for that one. I'm just bringing up one man's movies because I can't remember what I gave this. Oh, God. It's been a hard week.
I think you went for it, 5.
You're quite right, yes. I'm going to give it an 8 as well. So that's an 8 and an 8 and a 7 is 23 divided by 3 is 7.66 as the Flickering Dreams score. Is that right, Emma? You're my human calculator on this.
Good. Oh, don't trust me on that one. Oh.
Which makes Dumb Money a... Okay, we're moving rapidly on to another film here, which is Expendables 4. I haven't seen this one. Has anybody else? No. You haven't seen it? I think it's over to you, Emma, for Expendables 4. Given it's one of the big releases of last week, it's only 1 out of 4 of us who've seen it. But to be honest, I mean, I had lots of better things to do. Emma, can you introduce it?
Certainly. So, Expendables 4. More names, more guns, more explosions, less Stallone. Here's a clip.
Hey, why are you here?
I got this situation where I need your help.
I need bad friends.
Was that the new guy?
Is that sniper?
Don't worry about it. I got a prescription scope.
Well, Hawkeyes, remember this face. Don't shoot it by accident.
I must admit, we talked in previous week, might have been last week, about franchises that we'd never dived into. I have never seen an Expendables film at all, not one. Never really floated my boat. Was Expendables 4 better than any of the others? And were any of the others any good?
It's Ron Steele. It does exactly what it says on the tin. But you look at that poster, you know what you're getting. It's not a surprise. It is essentially Fast and Furious, just an action film with no cars. You get all the big names in it. Like, if you grew up in the 80s watching action films, you only ever used to see them in their own films. So, obviously, they've been adding in more characters. So, tell that your, favourite action star is getting a bit old, which I suspect is why Sylvester Stallone's in the entire movie. But it was nice. A new character in this one was played by Iko Uwais. I don't know how you pronounce his surname. Great martial artist. He was in The Raid, those 2 films. Amazing for the actions and the stunts and stuff. It was really nice to see. It just looked like they slowed down every scene he was in. And it just really did not do his skills justice. And he was really good in this. I can't say the same for Andy Garcia. They sort of gave him more to do in this one, and it's just terrible, absolutely terrible.
Wasn't Harrison Ford in the last Expendables film?
Yes,
I think wasn't he?
Was he in this one as well? That's not good when I can't remember, and I've only just seen it. I think he was in this one a little bit, maybe.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Can I ask a question, Emma?
Sure.
In terms of the editing, how was it with the fight scenes, especially having Iko Uwais? And I believe I've heard that Tony Jaa was in this film as well. And obviously those are 2 huge names in terms of the martial arts. Did they edit the life out of it like most of these Hollywood films do with these brilliant martial artists? Or do they show enough of it to show what they're actually capable of?
So, as I say, like, I thought Iko was very well represented on screen in the fight scenes. I haven't seen a lot of martial arts films before to sort of get the proper idea of it, but I did feel like you got good scenes. You weren't getting cut out just as someone gets pulled into the air by a pulley system in the background. It felt real, so I would say it was a pretty good representation, but don't hold me to that. I'm not an expert, I'm afraid. Okay. But for the action, top notch. I mean, who cares about a storyline? I mean, You don't watch an Expendables film for a storyline. So I don't think you missed anything by not seeing it at the cinema. But like, there were a few good chuckles, and anyone who saw Expendables 3, it obviously had Antonio Banderas in it. They've got, I think it's supposed to be his son in this one, and it's just like a little carbon copy, which was very amusing, and that made for a great character as well. But yeah, I think, quite honestly, there's no rushing out to the cinema to see it.
That's good. Okay, score on the door just for you.
Okay, so I'm going to give it a 7. However, on a real person, it's probably like a 5. I enjoyed it, but then I like to switch my brain off and laugh at people getting blown up in bad stunts. So
okay, you're going to stick with a 7. We can't treat you to a 6.9.
No, because you'll say it's terrible, and it's not terrible. It's amusing.
Okay, the Expendables, or whatever the way they spell it, gets a Flickering Dreams score. Just remember, I like to point out, of 7.0, making it a marginal, and I mention marginal.
Yeah, I'll allow that.
Okay. So at this point, we're going to start doing a new feature on Flickering Dreams, which is to run through the UK top 10 at the box office and see what Flickering Dreams score we gave it, and see if that's made any difference to where it sits in the rankings. I suppose one of the things we should do is look at some of the great films that we really loved and see what position they are in the chart, number 58 or whatever. But at number 10, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I seem to remember a certain person on this podcast giving a 10 out of 10 to. I might be wrong. But we certainly gave that a hit rating. We gave that a Flickering Dreams score of 8.5. It's at number 10. It's done very well. It's made a revenue of £9.6 million at the box office, which is pretty damn good. At number 9, we have Sound of Freedom. On the podcast, we gave that a score of 8.0. I hadn't actually seen it at that point. I would have rated it a 6, which actually reduces it down to 7.5. But it's still a hit. And that has made 1.8 million at the UK box office. So nowhere near the sort of revenue that it brought in the States. At number 8, close your ears, Andy. It's My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Just on that, I had an invitation to a press screening of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which I couldn't get to. I had an email today from the publicity department saying, "What did you think of the film?"
Did you send them a clip?
I wrote back and said, I'm so sorry. I wasn't very positive about this one. I didn't tell them I actually hated it to bits, and it's the worst movie of the year, and it's awful, and it should be thrown into the Aegean. But I did say I wasn't very positive.
So we gave that, I think it's the lowest Flickering Dreams score of the year so far at 1.0. And
boy, was it lucky to get that.
Boy, was it lucky, yes. And that's actually made less than £1 million at the UK box office. Right, and it's at number 8. So it's going to drop out next week. So it's not been a hit at the UK box office. So we're right there to give it a big old miss. Right. At number 7, still doing great business, is Oppenheimer. We gave that an 8.0. Big hit with us. That has made a staggering £57 million at the UK box office, which is pretty damn good for a 3-hour film about lots of people talking in rooms. So that's great. Number 6, one of my favourite, I know what some of our, Andy, your favourite films of the year, Past Lives.
Yeah, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, we gave that an 8.5. My daughter actually went to see that twice because she loved it so much. And it's made 1.2 million, which seems nothing, is it? I guess it's up there with 2/3 of the way to A Sound of Freedom. But that is more people should get out and see Past Lives. I've been telling everybody I meet to go and see Past Lives while they still can. What's at number 5? That Pink movie, Barbie. We like that one as well. We gave that an 8.5, and it has currently made £94 million at the UK box office, which is pretty impressive. Number 4, we've got a film which we have not featured on Flickering Dreams. I'm not sure whether any of us have seen it. It's the Hindi movie Jawan. That's at number 4, and it's made 2.4 million already in the UK.
I'm hoping to see that this week on Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. It has been showing at my cinema, but I don't tend to be able to catch those screenings.
Yeah,
it's very long. Very long.
The timings have been bad.
It does have an intermission apparently, so it gives you some
does it? Okay.
Most Hindi films do at the cinema.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. The world of cine shows a number of Hindi and Bollywood films, but they're always on in the evening. I need a matinee performance. I keep going on at Cineworld about it, but they don't listen. At number 3 is The Equalizer 3, which we also liked. We gave it a 7.66 score as a hit, and that has made 6.3 million at the box office. Good film. Denzel Washington on good form. Gotta love that. Number 2 is a film we declared to be a miss. I think that was just based on Andy's score of 5.0. That was The Nun 2. And that's made a pretty impressive 3.9 million at the box office already.
Quiet Nun.
Quiet. None! No, not that. Quiet. None!
No.
Yeah, I went to see that actually. Again, I can't remember what I gave it. I think I gave it a 4 or a 5 out of 10. It was okay. But like you say, been done lots and lots of times before. And at number 1 in the box office is a film which we actually declared to be a miss as well. I think this was mainly my and Emma's score that dragged it down, and that is Kenneth Branagh's A Haunting in Venice. We gave that a score of 6.25. I didn't like it, but so I'm to blame for that one, I think, primarily. But that's made 2.2 million at the box office, so doing all right, but not a fantastic score. So that's the UK top 10 box office. Any comments on that, guys? Films that you think should be in there?
Just on behalf of Emma, there's a certain shark film you didn't mention in the top 10. And I know it's still in cinemas.
Yeah,
I mean, we've all bought it now. It's to buy on streaming, so we get it in the pleasure of our own home now.
Is that the reason?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have thought you'd seen that enough at Emma each week to actually put it in the top 10. But
this is one of my gripes with Sky at the moment. They keep running adverts for movies that are now available. See them at home while they're still at the cinema. And you just think, how is that helping the cinema industry? Cineworld and others crying out for people to come in and see films in cinemas. And Sky run these adverts that say, see the film at home while it's still in the cinema. Yeah. No, go to the cinema and see it, because that's where you're meant to see it.
Absolutely.
It's really bugging me.
Okay.
I will say, I did buy the Meg 2 after it was no longer at my Cineworld.
Well, there you are. I think you've given them enough business, Emma. Let's look at another film which is on Prime Video, and that is a film called A Million Miles Away. Scott, do you want to introduce this one?
Sure. So A Million Miles Away is a biopic about a young boy called Jose Hernandez, whose lifelong dream is to become an astronaut. Here's a clip.
So, what's your big goal, dream?
I want to be an astronaut.
Oh my God. You're serious? Okay.
So A Million Miles Away was, in some ways, quite a typical biopic. We've got Michael Pena that plays the lead character. When he was a child, he is from a family of immigrants who have moved to the States, and he's helping his parents out in the fields picking fruit, I believe, or it might have been corn, basically working out in the fields. But Inspired by the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, he basically has this dream about working for NASA and going into space. And we watch this character and his journey from childhood through to manhood and the steps that he takes to try and make his dreams come true. Now, this is a film that doesn't necessarily have surprises in it, but for me, it wasn't really about that. For me, this film was all about showing how much hard work, perseverance, dedication, commitment, how important those things are to achieving your dreams, and that you get out of life what you put in, to coin a phrase that your parents could tell you. It's so true in this film, and it's such an inspiration to watch this man's journey in the face of so much negativity, so much people that didn't believe in him, and just show how much, with a little bit of support, that you can do what you want to with your life. I think the performance of Michael Pena was fantastic. I had a little bit of an issue about when we first see him as an adult, and I think Michael Pena was maybe a little bit too old to play him at that stage of his life.
He's the oldest graduate you've ever seen. Yes.
Maybe in the later part of his life you understood it, but I don't know if there maybe should have had a middle actor that could have played that. But yeah, so he was really good. His wife was played by Rosa Salazar, who I think of from Alita Battle Angel, and I don't think I've really seen her do much since then, unfortunately. I think she's a really good actress.
It was one of those names that I thought, I know that name. Where do I know that name from? And
I feel like we should have seen her in more by now. But hopefully we will see her in more projects. As I said, the cast was really good. It was a great sort of true story as well. And just a really enjoyable film.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it was a good kind of rags to riches tale told very solidly. What I really liked about it, because I put the ratings onto each of the reviews I do, and there are very, very few non-animated films which get a PG certificate. And here's a drama that is a PG film, which I think is a good family film, because I think the messages, and as you say, the kind of message in there about perseverance, regardless of number of times that you get rejected and you said no, moving forwards with that, I think was really good message for kids to have. And there was really nothing in the film. I mean, there are a couple of deaths in the film, one a kind of personal death and one a kind of historical tragedy, which everybody is aware of, which I guess you might need to prepare kids for. But I thought it was a good family film to sit down and watch together. I also had a problem with the aging. I mean, I think they could have youngified Pena and then made him a bit older later in the film. And ditto his wife. They barely look different from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. I also thought that some of the kind of chapter markings, there's like a structure of 6 things that his father says, follow this, my son, and you will have great success. And then they have like Tarantino-esque chapter markers saying, here's the first one. And then you get something which doesn't really bear much resemblance to that. And here's the second one. That kind of annoyed me as it being a bit fabricated. But overall, I thought it was a pretty damn good film. What would you rate it as, Scott?
So I rated this one 7 out of 10.
I rated it 7 out of 10 as well. Not sparkling, but I think it was a good, solid film. So that's a Flickering Dreams score of 7 for A Million Miles Away. It is A Million Miles Away. I was going to say A Million Miles from Home, like E.T. No, A Million Miles Away gets a Flickering Dreams score of 7.0, making it 8. Good. Worth catching, guys. Andy and Emma.
Yeah.
Good film. Moving on swiftly to our 4th film, and that is a film which I haven't seen, called The Lesson. I think this is out in cinemas. Andy, can you introduce that?
Yeah, I saw this afternoon. We are into the world of literature, meeting a famous author who is grieving the death of his son. But what's his wife up to? Here's a clip.
Ooh.
Good morning. You must be Bertie.
So you're my tutor?
Your father. He's the most revered writer in the country.
My husband, the subject of your thesis. You're not here for him. So don't talk about his work. Don't talk about Felix. Follow those rules and you should be fine.
Yeah, I described this in my intro to the podcast as being a kind of a whodunit, but there's no murder involved. Is that a fair summary?
Well, I think to say any more would be a plot spoiler. I don't know whether Scott and Emma would agree. I mean, there is a death in the film, but I wouldn't call it a murder. I really enjoyed this one. I thought that this was really intriguing. So we have Richard E. Grant, who I think, for me, is getting into a better actor the older he gets, actually. I think he's really good in this. He plays a famous author who wants his son to become a great writer as well. And they hire a tutor for his son, played by Darren McCormack, very rich family. Darren McCormack plays the guy who comes in to tutor Richard E. Grant's son. Richard E. Grant is writing another novel, but where's he getting his source? Where's he getting his inspiration from? Becomes a big question in the film. So Julie Delpy plays his wife, who is up to something, but we're never quite sure what. As the film progresses, slowly things begin to unravel. This doesn't move at a great pace, but it's really compelling. It's really intriguing. It really had me hooked from the start. I thought The Lesson was terrific. One of the best dramas I've seen in a very long time. Yeah.
Good. Scott, how about you?
So I am a little bit on the fence with this one.
Okay.
I came away from this struggling a little bit, to be honest. When I was watching it, I appreciated some of the way the narrative was going. I'll just say, the first 2/3 of this film, I honestly found quite boring. I could see that the director was taking things at a deliberate pace, but she was putting in nuggets that would be leading to something in the third act. Although I thought it was quite obvious when certain things were put on screen that I was like, oh, that's obviously going to come into play later. And I don't know. Darren McCormack, I thought, was good. He is a really charismatic actor, but not in an outlandish way. I loved him in that film last year with Emma Thompson.
Yeah, Leo Grande.
I thought, yes, good luck to you, Leo Grande.
Good luck to you,
I think
Leo
it was
Grande,
titled.
yes.
Yeah.
Excellent film.
Fantastic movie, fantastic performance from him. I can't wait to see how his career goes. Richard E. Grant was good in moments. I did think there was times he was a little bit OTT for my personal taste. But I can definitely see why Andy is saying that he's going through this career surge again. I think there's a part of this film where it talks about the novel that Grant's character is writing and how the third act may tonally be different from the first two acts. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, this is quite interesting because I think this film in the third act is tonally different to the first two acts.
It really is, yeah.
And
for me, that was
I don't know
clever.
if that was on purpose. Yeah, it could be on purpose.
I think it was
or
on purpose,
it could just
Scott,
be.
very much so.
You think
Yeah.
maybe because it just goes a little bit wild in the last third, and there's a lot of sort of twists and turns, mystery, deceit, and I was just watching it like, I don't know if this was maybe spread out through the whole film, okay, or if, although I was finding it a bit boring, if tonally it was consistent from beginning to end, I would have respected that more. The fact that the first two acts were boring and the third one was so dramatic, I was like, I just don't know if it meshes. I feel like this is one of those that maybe if I was to watch it again, I might get more out of it on a second watch. But yeah, I did struggle a little bit with this, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I mean, I thought the script was really, really clever in the way that it built, and as you say, the film in the way it's structured parallels the structure of the novel that Richard E. Grant is writing, and I only realised that as I was walking out actually after the end credits, and it suddenly dawned on me. Hang on a moment. Yes, what have you just seen? You've just seen the novel that the guy's writing in the film almost enacted out. And I just thought the structure was terrific. I thought it was very, very clever.
Right. I think it's just the two of you that have seen this. Emma, you haven't seen it either.
No, sadly we didn't get this.
I think it's probably going to be a Marmite movie, Scott, would you say?
A little bit. And it's one that I would say as well that you could probably wait until it comes to streaming as well. I wouldn't say it's a must rush to the cinema to see. It doesn't. It's not like a cinema. Yeah, you don't need great cinematography or anything. It's one of those, you could say, Sunday movies with a cup of tea type films that you could watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe Sunday evening.
Scores from you.
Oh yes. Yeah. Okay, yeah, evening. You're right.
So I gave it an 8. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Right. Scott?
I gave it a perhaps harsh 5.
Ooh. 8 and 5, 13. That makes it a 6.5, which makes the lesson
it's close.
Very marginal. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to our 5th film. I think this is one that Scott is about to rave about. This is on Netflix. I think it's new, and it's called. Is it The Accused or Just Accused?
Just Accused.
The Accused was Jodie Foster getting hurt, wasn't it?
It was. Yes. Yes. Scott, do you want to introduce this?
Absolutely. So I just watched this one last night, a bit on a whim. It's a film about a guy who goes on a train trip to his parents' house to dog sit when they're on holiday. While he is on the train, there is news that there has been a bombing at the train station that he had just left. While he's at his parents' house, there happens to be a suspect that a picture is shown on TV, and there becomes a social media witch hunt where our lead character becomes the main suspect. Here's a clip.
I do not want to be here on my own.
Oh, that's what I thought. Oh my god.
What is it?
Is that you on my TV?
That's not me.
Oh my god,
Right.
that does look like you.
Police have urged any witnesses with information on it.
So, with this one, our lead character, Harry, played by a guy called Shanil Kular, I thought was fantastic. I thought this movie, which is essentially a thriller come horror, was one of the most gripping films I've seen all year. From the sort of introduction to these characters, we get to know them a little bit. We get to see what they're like as people. We get to see his family life. We meet his girlfriend, meet his parents. And we also see that this is a film that is heavily involving social media and the dangers involved in terms of the internet and the keyboard warriors that hide behind it. This film, when we see someone suspected of something and the way the internet just goes crazy to try and find out who it is, it just is really scary. And what scared me as well is how quickly people on the internet were able to try and track down personal information so fast just through all their sources on the internet. And it makes you think about what is all that private information you have on the internet, social media. It definitely made me think about everything I've got online, and if anyone wanted to track me down, how easy I'd be to find. This film, in the first half, was intriguing from that social perspective, in terms of when someone is accused of something they didn't do, and the fear that comes within someone who has been accused of something that they didn't do. And then the second half, it becomes, I think Andy would agree, a bit of a horror movie, in sort of almost the original Purge home invasion type of movie, you could say, where vigilanteism has taken over and our character is afraid for his life. This film Andy was talking about last week not seeing a film that scared him this year. And although this isn't technically a horror film, and it's not a film that's about jump scares, this film had my heart racing for the majority of its running time. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but it's the kind of film where sometimes you watch film and you know, oh, it's the lead character, they're going to be fine. With this one, I wasn't sure. I didn't know if our lead character would be fine or not. It just kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. And because of how invested I felt, I was absolutely loving it. By the time it finished, my heart was still racing. When I sort of left my girlfriend's flat to go out to the pub quiz, and I was just the whole trip there, the film was just playing through my head, and I was like, yeah, that was amazing. That was amazing. That's so scary what social media and what people on the internet can be like.
This is the person who wrote a review for Sound of Freedom.
Oh, don't start. Oh, that blew up so much. The comments. Nobody wants to go to my comments on my page for that. It's just vile.
No, it is. It is amazing what keyboard warriors will say. Yeah. Andy, do you have the same take?
I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as Scott. For me, it is a horror film, but the horror comes, as Scott has said, from the fact that people can track you down so quickly on the internet. All the information that's out there about you is incredible. For me, it fell away a little bit, Scott, in the third act. It became a home invasion movie, like you say, so akin to The Purge. And I was a little bit, I wanted something a bit more cleverer, because the first part of the film was really clever, it was really scary, really suspenseful. And then suddenly it's like, let's just ditch all that in favour of just having some action. So I kind of saw it a bit different to what you did. I wanted a little bit more, to be a little bit more clever, a little bit more smart in the third act, whereas they said, no, the third act is just... Now, I agree it was gripping, and I agree that I didn't know if the lead character was going to survive or not. And there was one point where I actually thought, you really worry for him. Is he going to survive or not? That's superbly well done. But it did seem to me the first two parts of the film were clever, slowly building up the tension, use of the internet, use of, Facebook on screen. We've all seen it before, messages and so on. And I rather felt it ditched some of its cleverness towards the end in favour of let's just go all out action, gung-ho. So I was slightly disappointed by the third act because I just wanted it to maintain the pace and the suspense of the first two acts. And for me, it didn't. That is not to say it isn't a good film. And it's not to say that the action in that third act isn't well shot and keeps you watching. So that was fine. I just felt it lost its way a little bit.
I don't think you've seen it yet, Emma.
No, I didn't have a chance.
I'd recommend it.
Sounds your type of film.
It does sound like my sort of film.
Yeah. Yes.
It does.
I think it is.
Scores on the doors. And Andy, what would you give it?
I'll give it a 7.
7. Scott?
Okay, I'll make the maths easy for you on this one, Bob, because I'm going to give this one a 9.
A 9. So that's a Flickering Dreams score of 8.0. Even I can do that one. Making Accused on Netflix. Right, we're moving on to another streaming film here. This time it's on Disney Star Channel, and this is No One Will Save You. Now, as I think I've said before, one of my favourite, if not my favourite film of all time is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But what would happen if the aliens who descended were not quite as cuddly and friendly? Here's a clip. So this one I'd heard lots of buzz about on the internet, so I went out of my way to watch it. I wasn't actually aware when this one came out. It stars Kaitlyn Dever, who's one of my favourite actresses. She was absolutely brilliant in the TV series Dope Sick, which if you've not seen Dope Sick, you really should give it a watch with Michael Keaton as well. Brilliant series. And of course she was in Booksmart, which first brought her to attention. And she's just a spectacular actress. And she really gets a chance to act in this, playing scared shitless, which she does absolutely brilliantly. How this film pans out is that something has happened in the past. You don't know what as the viewer, but she lives in a remote house near a small US town. And when she does surface in the US town, she's basically vilified and shunned and even physically spat at by the locals. So something has happened. You don't know what it is. Clearly, she lives a very lonely and reclusive life in her house, and she doesn't have any visitors to the house until she does in the middle of the night. And we get effectively a rehash of that amazing Spielberg scene from Close Encounters, the abduction of Barry, where the house goes wild and aliens effectively enter the house. I don't want to spoil where the film goes from that point. I think the special effects were actually done very well. The film like this lives or dies on what the alien looks like, and fortunately there were less Mars attacks in this and more a traditional alien as you would see in the Roswell autopsies. If you've seen those pictures, they were clearly following that type of line, which is absolutely fine with me. As I said, Kaitlyn Dever, I think, was absolutely fantastic in this. And it goes in a very strange direction, I have to say. It rips off just about every science fiction film you can imagine, from Close Encounters in particular, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, a little bit of Wrath of Khan in places from Star Trek, and A Quiet Place as well is another kind of touchstone for it. The ending is definitely going to be a Marmite one for a lot of people. It is very, very difficult to work out what the film means at the end. I've got my own interpretation, but I've seen 3 or 4 different what happened in reviews, all of them different for what happens in the end of this film. I liked it. I would have really liked to see it on the big screen in the cinema. I think this is a cinematic film that would have worked really well on a big screen with proper kind of shading of the colours, so you could actually see some of what was going on in the darkness behind, which frankly you couldn't see on my television very well. But I generally liked it. Emma, did you see it?
Unfortunately, I did not manage to catch any more films
okay.
at all. No.
Right. Scott, I think you saw it, didn't you?
I didn't see this one either.
Oh, it's just me.
It's just you, Bob. You're on
your own. Me.
You've got all the power.
I'm on my own. I have absolute power. Yeah. Right. Well, as I say, I liked it. I wasn't sure this one completely landed its ending, but it's still pretty good science fiction film and definitely worth a watch. I give this one a 7 out of 10. So it's just based on my review, and what do I know, right? I didn't like Haunting in Venice, and it's number 1. But at 7 out of 10, that makes it a marginal with me. The last film we're looking at today is a animated film with a cast of characters, famous people doing the voices. That's the Canterville Ghost. Emma, can you introduce that?
Certainly. An American family have come over to quaint oldie England and are taking up residence in a haunted mansion. The ghost there is trying to scare them out, but being the modern people they are back in the day, they're having none of it. Here's a clip.
Welcome to Canterville Chase,
our new home.
In the past, every owner of this house has been forced to flee by the ghost of Simon de Canterville.
I don't think you're that scary at all.
Oh. So what's the time period of this? You said back in the day. Is this set in the 1800s or something?
I believe so. I will bow to Andy on that because I know
it's based on an 1887 story by Noel Coward. So,
right. So
I think it's kind of turn of the century type time. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, so it's Noel Coward, is it?
Yeah, Noel Coward wrote the original story. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right. Okay.
Sorry, Emma, I interrupted you.
It's okay. literally, I'm no good with my historical sort of dates. I just go, it's a period piece, and then we leave it at that. So I may be a little bit of an animation snob about this. It's very much chocolate box backgrounds with computer generated and characters, and I'm not overly keen on that style. So it made it a little jarring to watch for me. There are some beautiful scenes that are, created.
Beautiful chocolate boxes.
Yeah, beautiful chocolate boxes. The story is, it is really fun. I have not read the traditional version. I'm not sure what happens in that, but, it is a ghost story, humorous, quite heartwarming at some points as well. Good old romp, basically. It's it's entertaining. The daughter is the sort of main character, and she's very keen on going home and leaving. So she essentially teams up with the ghost to come up with a plan. It's a very nice family watch. There's no doubt about it. It's a very pleasant film. The only thing is that watching it reminds me of a lot of things that I remember watching in my childhood, and it feels much more like it could have been a live action TV show to me. Having it as this feature film didn't feel quite right, and I think it is because it is very much like a lot of the TV shows that I used to watch. But yeah, the voice cast is all good. You will recognise more or less everyone in it. And as I say, I found it a very pleasant watch.
Okay. Andy?
I really enjoyed it. I thought this is a really good family film. There's a little touch of the Scooby-Doo about it at times. But the vocal cast, you've got Stephen Fry playing the ghost, you've got Hugh Laurie, you've got Toby Jones. I mean, terrific cast of great voices, really, really giving it their all. I just thought this was one to take the kids to see. And for an hour and a half, it's going to keep them quiet, it's going to keep them entertained, it's going to keep them hooked. And it's just good fun. I thought the animation was not overwhelmingly good, but very good. It's quite standard animation. But the story's good. The story still holds up. And, a ghost failing. I mean, obviously we've got the TV series coming back, Ghosts, on the BBC, and I just wondered whether the timing is coincidental that we've now got a kids' film about a ghost who's trying to drive a family out of his home. I mean, the other one that's been remastered and coming out on Monday, in that sense, is The Others, but this has got nothing to do with The Others at all. This is a family-friendly film, really enjoyable for kids. I can see kids loving this. I can actually see kids coming out of the cinema and saying, well, when's that out on DVD? Or Blu-ray, so that we can get it and watch it at home, or when will it be streaming? Because I just enjoyed it. Yeah,
good. Okay, scores on the doors from you two, Andy.
I enjoyed it so much. I'm going to give it an 8.
An 8, Emma.
Some more easy maths for you. I'm giving this one a 6.
Okay, so that puts us on the borderline again. We've been on that borderline lots of times. Flickering Dreams scores 7.0, making a marginal for the Canterville Ghost. Okay, that's our 7th film. I don't think we've ever done 7 films in an episode before, so I'm going to have lots of editing to do. We're going to move on to AOB. We've got quite a lot of AOB to get through today, so we'll rattle through some of this. The London Film Festival starts next week in London, runs from October the 4th. I've been at the pre-week press screenings and greatly enjoyed some of the films I saw. I've only been able to get to 2 days, but the standouts for me were a wonderful Australian set film called The Royal Hotel, which is one of the most boring titles imaginable. Why they couldn't have picked a better title, I don't know. But that stars the wonderful Julia Garner, and also
Really? I've heard that.
And from which
Evan Baxter.
From which planet are they from?
Jessica Henwick. Sorry, there was a bit of interference on the podcast there. Jessica Henwick and Julia Garner, two backpacking girls who are stuck in this Australian bar as a server with a rowdy bunch of minor folk who are the customers. Brilliant piece of filmmaking, brilliant acting, and directed by Kitty Green, who did The Assistant with Julia Garner, which was a highly underrated Me Too film from a couple of years ago. Watch out for that. I think it opens at the beginning of November, and we will no doubt review it properly. And another fantastic film I saw today, which is called Fallen Leaves, which is, imagine Brief Encounter set in Finland with a bunch of very, very lugubrious but very, very funny Finnish people. And you've kind of got the basic premise of Fallen Leaves. Assuming it gets released this year, it may make my top 10 of the year. I thought it was a terrific film. So that's all coming. Big highlight films of the actual London Film Festival. We've got Saltburn with Emerald Fennell. I can never remember her name. We've got Killers of the Flower Moon by Martin Scorsese, who's actually there in person at the LFF doing a talk at one point. We have The Killers with Michael Fassbender. There's probably a bunch of others. Emma, you've been looking at them. What have I missed?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. I've got my list.
Sorry, that's put you on the spot.
You mentioned the Miyazaki film, didn't you?
Was that the boy? The Boy and the Heron is showing. One I'm really excited to see is One Life with Anthony Hopkins.
Oh yes, Anthony Hopkins.
I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I actually I'd seen the video that is in that trailer, and I was like, that video gets me every time I watch it. So that's high on my list to see.
Yeah, so a lot of good films, and it was really great experience actually being there this week. I say it was the press previews, but sitting in a packed auditorium in the BFI, watching a film with film critics and film people was really an experience. Code of conduct was fantastic, of course. Nobody had their phones out or anything, and just the quiet kind of focus on the film was wonderful. Yeah, there's a wonderful point in Fallen Leaves where they've been watching that zombie film with what's his name, Adam Driver, yeah. They're watching that zombie film from a few years back with Adam Driver and Bill Murray, and they come out, and these two kind of guys come out of the cinema ahead of them and start talking like film critics to each other. So it reminded me of so-and-so and so-and-so in a highly pretentious way about this zombie film, which I thought was very funny. And of course, being in a room full of film critics and cinema people, there was a roar of laughter at that one. It was very good. Yeah, so that's London Film Festival. If you're around in London and you can get tickets because they go like hotcakes, then watch out for that. Next up on AOB, Scott, you wanted to talk about the Golden Globes, which are coming up.
It's just a quick one, something I noticed today when I was scrolling through the internet. The Golden Globes have announced that there will be 2 extra categories that they're adding this year. One that's more...
Stuntmen.
Unfortunately, it's not Stuntman, Bob, sorry. So one of them's relevant to us here at Flickering Dreams, and so the Oscars kind of tried this. They've called it the Golden Globe for Cinematic and Box Office Achievement. So films that are eligible for this are films that have grossed at least $150 million, and $100 million of that must have came from domestic office. So essentially, the biggest grossing films of the year.
Well, there's no doubt where that's going this year, is there?
I mean, I'm not a betting person, but I could easily be persuaded.
No, I'm not a betting person.
As to where that might
I wonder if they'll spray paint it pink. Yeah.
I don't know if the prize goes to the most money or just... It says there's, I think, 8 nominees, so I think it's maybe the 8 highest grossing get nominated. Really? I don't know how they decide who wins. I don't really understand that, but that's something that happened. The other one is something to do with best performance in stand-up comedy and television. So I think it's because there's lots of comedic stand-up specials all the time. So that's another one that's added. But yeah, just thought it was something quick to mention. And something just quickly as well, as I'm looking at my phone, a bit of sad news here. I found out that David McCallum has passed away. Who I know is Ducky from NCIS, and I'm literally just finding out that news now.
Those of us
very sad.
Those of us who are a bit older know him as one half of the Man from U.N.C.L.E., the Russian half.
You do?
Yeah, TV series.
Open Channel D.
Yeah, exactly, Bob. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Man from U.N.C.L.E. was on when I was growing up.
Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Fantastic series.
And running along the railway track in The Great Escape and getting machine gunned down. Yeah. So good. True. So many great roles. Yeah. Oh, that is a sad loss. Yes. Yeah, great actor. The other thing we wanted to talk about was The Exorcist, which is 50 years old. In fact, it's a little bit of a cheat because I was actually looking at the release dates, and in the US, the film was released on Boxing Day in 1973, and in the UK, it wasn't released until the 16th of March next year. As it was 74. So all these 50th anniversary things, maybe it's the 50th anniversary of when it was filmed, right? But it's maybe jumping a gun a little. But there are lots of showings. I saw there's another one coming up in picture houses in the next week as well of The Exorcist. And Cineworld as well, is it? Okay. I actually saw it with Andy at the BFI last week or the week before last. First time I've ever seen it, so it's one of those embarrassing films. I'm going to go around you in a second and say, what's the biggest film that you've never seen, right? What's the most embarrassing gap in your movie history? But one of mine was I've never seen The Exorcist, and actually it was very interesting to watch it with a full cinema of people. Lots of laughs. I didn't expect there to be laughs in The Exorcist, but there were lots of, and not kind of intentionally, oh, that was terrible laughs, but
generally
just
funny.
some of the incidents and things, it was generally funny. And it still has the power, some elements of that story, to shock, and with the language used and some of the imagery used, you could see why it got a reputation and why nuns were kind of spraying people with holy water on the way out. As happened back in the mid-70s.
I mean, Bob, my feeling was that I've seen, unlike you, I'd seen The Exorcist a number of times, both cuts, but I'd only ever seen it at home. I've got the Blu-ray with both cuts and Kermode's documentary on the making of it. So this was the first time I'd seen it with an audience projected. When last time I watched the Blu-ray, I was sat thinking, this doesn't hold up very well at all. You know, the special effects aren't that great. This is not old. Seeing it on the big screen with an audience, I was actually sat thinking, well, these effects are pretty good, actually. The other thing that surprised me was the film moves at a rapid pace. There are literally lots of sort of jump cuts. So 1 minute Reagan is a nice, friendly little girl. The next minute there's something slightly wrong with her. The next minute she's being put into a tube to get a brain scan, and she's all over the place, you know. And there's very little explanation. Mark Kermode talks about the argument that existed between the director and the writer about giving the audience time to breathe. You know, how fast do we make this?
Yes.
To me, it moved at an incredible pace. When I sat and watched it at home last time, I was on my own. I was thinking, well, this is a bit slow. Get on with it. So it's really, I think this is one of the shows where see it with an audience. See it on the big screen. See it, you'll probably end up appreciating it much more because of the effect that it's having on the audience as a whole. So that was just my observation on the night.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's certainly worth seeing on the big screen.
Yeah.
I mean, best film ever made, as Mark Kermode will say. No, sorry, Dr. Kermode, if you're watching this, I would disagree. I mean, the whole initial section, which is very much Raiders of the Lost Ark. You wonder whether Spielberg was a fan of this film, because a lot of the imagery of the dig in the desert and so on that happens at the beginning, which I wasn't aware was in the film, is very kind of Raiders-like. But how that ties in with Max von Sydow to the later bit isn't explained. A lot of the film is a little
bit tenuous.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? Yeah. That you don't explain what's going on.
I kind of get the link. But, I think I did get the link, but then, not unlike you, I've seen it several times, so I've had a chance to think about it, and I've worked out what the link is between the beginning and the scene where Max von Sydow turns up to do the exorcism. So I think, again, that it does reward a second viewing in a way. But the greatest film ever?
Yes.
No way. And I've said that to Mark to his face.
Okay, so that's The Exorcist 50th anniversary. Watch out for showings of that if you're brave enough. We're going to move on now to a regular slot, which I must admit we missed last week, but that is our featured director slot. And this week we've picked a director. It's another of those cases where we pick a director and you say, oh, I hope there's enough films to go around here that we can talk about. And you look at this featured director and he's got a wealth of great films that we can talk about. And that director is Denis Villeneuve. Who we start with? Scott, why don't you introduce your favourite Denis Villeneuve film?
Okay, so my favourite Denis Villeneuve film is the oldest one we're going to be talking about tonight, and that is Prisoners.
Anna? Joy?
Wait, I checked the entire house. They're not here.
Dad, there was this RV, and they were playing on it. We thought there was someone inside.
You wait here. Let me go. I couldn't find them!
Detective Loki.
Do you have children, Detective?
I'm going to find your daughter.
This film has just, like quite a lot of his films, actually, a stacked cast. Some of the main cast include Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Viola Davis, Paul Dano, that we talked about earlier, Melissa Leo, Maria Bello, Terrence Howard. I could go on. Essentially, this is a dark thriller about kidnapping. Essentially, the children of Hugh Jackman and Viola Davis's characters, different families, they get kidnapped, and Jake Gyllenhaal is one of the lead police involved in trying to find them. However, frustrated at the lack of progress that they're making, Hugh Jackman essentially takes matters into his own hands. Now, this film is super intense. It's dark narratively, and the colour palette matches it as well. It's a very dimly lit film purposefully. I think this is some of the best acting that I've seen from many of the cast here. I think Paul Dano is extraordinary. There's one scene between him and Hugh Jackman that is in my head permanently. It's an extraordinary scene. And there's just so much suspense throughout the whole movie. We talked about pacing a couple of times tonight. The pacing in this just keeps going for, I'm pretty sure it's like over 2 hours, maybe closer to 2.5 hours, I think it is. But it doesn't feel boring or slow at any point. It just keeps going at a rapid pace. And it's another edge of your seat thriller. Very violent film. So if you're not into that, beware. But yeah, for the pure intensity and superb acting performances, Prisoners is my favourite Denis Villeneuve film.
I have to put my hand up and say I've never seen this, so that's going to have to go on my list. Emma, how about you?
So my pick, now it's going to be one of those films, Bob, where I go, you won't believe me, but I haven't seen the original Blade Runner, and yet I am picking Blade Runner 2049.
I just realised we didn't go round and pick the big gaps in our film history, but I think you've just answered that one, Emma. You haven't seen the original Blade Runner?
Not.
Wow.
Who knows why?
Get thee to a nunnery. Yeah.
You're not missing much, Emma. It's not actually that good.
Emma,
overrated.
Emma, you're missing a fabulous, fantastic film that is so much better than the sequel. And there are 5 different versions of Blade Runner to choose from. Just remember that as well.
Go on then,
see
Emma.
the final cut. That's the one you need to see.
Talk to us.
No. So I saw the trailer for this one, and I was like, okay, that looks really good.
You're a cop. I did your job once. I was good at it.
I know.
now I would have watched the original before going to see it. But back then, I was just... everything that came on the cinema, I would go and watch it regardless. And I was a bit concerned because I think the cinematic runtime was like 3 hours when you include all the extra bits. And I get antsy at anything past 2.5 hours. And I was like, oh, this is going to be... I'm not going to be able to cope. I'm going to get bored. And I checked my watch and there were only 10 minutes left of the film. And it just hooked me in. I thought the effects were great. Although at that point, not a massive fan of Ryan Gosling. I thought actually this character suited him quite well. I love the additions. Dave Bautista's in it. And is it Ana de Armas as well?
Ana de Armas is in it, yes. I was just looking up to see if that was her first film or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought like the whole ensemble works really well. And like speaking to people, they're like, oh, I like this because it, you know, it does relate to the original. And even though I couldn't see that, I really appreciated all those things. Bizarrely, like when we said we were picking this director, I wouldn't have been able to name many of his films, but I like instantly knew that was the film I wanted. I loved it at the cinema, really enjoyed it. Yeah, it just hit the right spots, but yeah, it doesn't make me want to see the original, I'm afraid.
having just looked up Ana de Armas, she first appeared in the film 11 years before Blade Runner, presumably as a child actor. So she's been in lots of films and TV movies before she got to Blade Runner. There you go. Okay, yeah. I mean, I just looked back and I gave it a 9 out of 10 for the sequel. Must admit, I have never watched it since, but could be worth another rewatch. Yeah. Andy, what about your?
Yeah, okay. So I have gone for something that may be pretty obvious, but I've gone for June.
There's something happening to me. There's something awakening in my mind. I can't control it.
What did you see?
There's a crusade coming.
I was one of the very few people on the planet who liked the 1986 David Lynch version with Patrick Stewart and Sting. I thought that was a really, really good, solid piece of science fiction. But then that was just me, as it turned out. So I was really curious to see what he was going to do with the new version. The cheek of having bagpipes being played on an alien planet is one of the great delights of this film. But the real delight is the way in which they've kept so close to the book. Because I was a fan of the original novel. It's a doorstop of a book. I think Frank Herbert's writing was captivating. Frank Herbert's writing is incredibly descriptive. And I really feel that in the 2021 film, they really brought the world of Dune to life. One of the problems was always going to be the giant worms on this sand planet. And they've done them absolutely brilliantly. Obviously, we've got all the special effects and computer-generated imagery that you want these days. But I really, really thought that the book was brought to life. I can't wait for the second part later this year. I thought that Timothée Chalamet gave one of his best performances. Zendaya was really good. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica in this was excellent. Hans Zimmer's score is one of my most played of recent years. It's very bombastic, but it's a fantastic score. He had a great year because he was doing No Time to Die and all sorts of other things. So he's had a good run recently. Yeah. I think that the 2021 film version is superb, and I can't wait for part 2 later this year. That would be my pick. I loved Arrival, but this would be my pick.
I don't want to upset you.
Has it? Because of the strike. Yeah.
Strike.
Okay. I hadn't picked up on that, but we'll have to. Well, okay. More time to anticipate and enjoy and wait for it. Right, okay.
Yeah, I think it's March or April
next year.
I'm really sorry, I hadn't picked up on that.
One thing that's going to screw up our early Oscar predictions.
More to look forward to.
Yes. Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, at least you've got Past Lives in there, Scott, so you might be okay. Yeah, you just mentioned the film that I picked, Andy, which is Arrival.
Signs of what might be called first contact. The objects measure at least...
I'm Colonel G.T. Weber from Army Intelligence. Pack your bags. You're at the top of everyone's list when it comes to translations. Priority 1. What do they want? Where are they from? You'll be reporting to me, but you'll be working with him. When
when you're in the show? That's what they call it, a UFO.
And this was actually my number one film of 2016. Stars Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams, of course. Looked unprepossessing from the trailer. I must admit, I went into it with no expectations at all. The script was by Eric Hesserer, who had previously only written kind of sequels and reboots for horror films like Final Destination 5 and the reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street. So it didn't look promising, but boy, oh boy, it moves at a fairly glacial pace, goes all close encountery at one point, including the special edition where we go inside the spacecraft, but that's actually done very well. Brilliant score by the much missed Johan Johansson, but there is a monumental twist in this film that you never see coming, and I didn't see it coming. And it just knocked me sideways as a film. I thought it was so brilliantly executed. Unfortunately, it's not really a film that you can see again in a short period of time. It's not even as good as The Sixth Sense, because The Sixth Sense, if you know what happens in that film, you can watch it again and spot the clues. And there was a certain amount of this with watching it again. But I remember raving about this film after seeing it at the cinema. And then a few months later, I got the DVD and I watched it again. And I went, oh, because it didn't have the same impact, because it couldn't have the same impact, a bit like Sixth Sense. But it's still a cracking film. And I think given the period of maybe, 7 years now since I last saw it, I think I might revisit Arrival and see if it still packs a punch. So those are our 4 films. We've got Prisoners, we've got Blade Runner, the reboot,
2049.
2049. I always get the number wrong. We've got June
49.
And we've got Arrival. So those are our Denis Villeneuve picks. Lots more we could have chosen from, obviously, but those are the 4 we got. And I think that's a bumper edition of Flickering Dreams. We've gone on a little bit more than our normal time, but we had a lot to talk about. So that's all right. We will be back with you next time. So my thanks to Andy Godfrey of Konnect Radio and Sorted Magazine, Emma Sewell from Emma at the Movies on Twitter, and Scott Forbes from the Forbes Film and TV Review on Facebook. And I'm Bob Mann from One Man's Movies. And we'll see you again next time on Flickering Dreams. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much for listening or watching Flickering Dreams. You can find the video version on YouTube and the audio version on all major podcast platforms. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get each of the weekly episodes as they are released. We'll see you at the movies.